Welcome to Lowcountry Money Talk with the Revolutionary Financial Group. Of course, I'm here with Phil Bloyd. I'm Betsy McDaniel, in for Jessa Jeremiah today.
Hey.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you again, Betsy.
Yeah, so we're going to jump into some current events, and boy,
Sure.
do we have some things to talk about.
A few things going on these days. Seems
people
like
are a little
always.
scared. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, a little scary with the banks and stuff. So just real quick, everybody probably knows this already, but what has happened, we've had a period of 0% interest for so long. You know, it's really good when you're buying a home or a new car
Right.
and all that, right?
Absolutely.
But the banks, you know, they should be getting some interest actually over the term of 20 years. So really that wasn't going on. So the Federal Reserve's been into that quantitative easing or whatever you want to call it for all that time. And then all of a sudden we go from 0% interest to 4-5% interest as far as the Fed funds rate in a year.
Yeah.
That's like culture shock. So
It's like, wait, what just happened?
the good days are over. So what happens, you know, we've had these banks, and this wasn't a normal bank, so not to get too, you know, scared and things. This was more like a venture capital bank. 90% of their deposits were over the 250 as far as the insured amount.
So that's, I mean, that really is important to note,
Yeah.
because that is not your normal bank.
No.
Yeah.
These were like for tech companies. Silicon Valley was that say, right?
Right.
So they're for tech companies, venture capital, startups. All, you know, it's not great for them to lose their money either. Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, if anybody watches that, he had, I think, 15 million or something in it. He says, hey, you know, it should have failed. He said, I'm a risk taker. I'm all about that, you know.
And good for him that he can risk $15 million. I
Yeah,
would say
right.
the average Joe probably
Sure.
can't do that.
Probably not. And I don't think there was too many average Joes in this bank.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, so the problem with this bank is they had a terrible investment portfolio. They didn't have any risk manager for the last year. They only had one person with bank experience on the board. So I wouldn't, you know, tie in all the big banks to that.
Yeah.
But the problem was they had long-term investments paying 2%. Short-term rates went up to 4 or 5% on treasuries. 42 billion came out of their bank. They had a run on the bank like It's a Wonderful Life, Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
They had to sell their long-term investments, and they sold them at a haircut, which means they lost money. So to come up to cover the deposits coming out because they already lent out all of your money that was on deposit.
Right.
You know, there's some other safe forms, or I would say low-risk type forms of investing that people should look into. So if we get the 250 met at the bank, then we can maybe talk about some other things.
Some other things
Yeah,
that
sure.
are a little less risky than,
Right.
you know, putting it in, like you said before we started filming, the Real Housewives of San Francisco
Yeah, right.
Bank, right? Okay.
That's the board.
Yeah, exactly.
The real.
All right,
yeah.
well, so if you are looking for how to have your retirement safe, you're going to have to call Rachel so that you can get your revolutionary wealth review going. And so it's free.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Let's
So
look at
that's-
some of the choices.
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure that you're calling Rachel, and we're going to be back in just a minute with a lot more. So stay with us. And we are back on Lowcountry Money Talk. Of course, Phil is still with me. And so we had a little drama in the first segment, and now we're going to talk about some more drama
Sure.
that's coming up in the spring and
Right.
summer with the debt limit situation.
Yeah, that's a nice thing we get into every year.
Yeah, lots
Big
of fun.
fight, you know. I think it's more about leveraging because really neither political party cares much about the debt or they wouldn't spend so much money.
I mean,
Yeah.
they just open the purse strings
Right.
whenever they want.
So that's going to be with the market will probably fluctuate on that, you know, so we move from the banks, now we'll move to the next drama. It almost seems like we just keep going through this and the stock market go up and the stock market go down. And, you know, it's just kind of a positioning thing.
Yeah.
I always get a kick when they say, they want us to default on our debt, and we're never going to default on our debt. It's not going to happen. There's
Right.
a big printing press right over there. We just crank them dollar bills right out. So,
Well, let's talk about that because that
Sure.
is, I suppose, one of the solutions.
Sure.
A couple other solutions might
Yeah.
be to, like you said, cut spending,
Oh.
or, of course, their favorite thing to do,
Yeah.
raise taxes.
Raise taxes.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we're thinking about our own household, right? So if we have too much going out and not enough coming in, we've got to trim something.
Right.
So either we have to work more jobs, bring more revenue in. That would be taxes for the government, right? Because they don't really work. The other thing we could spend less. So it's like, oh, do I need that? Oh, maybe not. Okay, government's not really good at
The government
spending
never
that.
says that. The government never says maybe not. Maybe we don't need that.
Right. So taxes, spend less, or just print more money. And that's kind of what we're into now. That's why we have inflation.
Right.
So the Federal Reserve is carrying too much of our debt on their balance sheet. Trillions and trillions. I lose count whether it's 6 or 9. It's a bunch.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Lots of zeros.
Right. So what they're doing, they keep raising interest rates because there's too much cash supply out there. So they want less cash supply. So they have to slow everything down. And so far they haven't been able to do it because the job reports keep coming out. People are still getting jobs and all this. But there's a lot of bubbles in the line because what they do today, it may take a while for it to come out the other side. So a lot of people are worried that, I don't think there's going to be this soft landing they talk about. I was in marine aviation. I've been in some hard landings.
Yeah.
I know what they are.
I don't want to be in those with you, but that is a term that's being thrown around a lot these days. Is it's going to be a hard landing?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that, to me, that's not a good thing. I don't think so. It doesn't sound good. So I saw something this week. It said for every dollar in revenue that the government brings in, they're spending $1.29.
Fabulous.
Yeah. How would your home function on that,
I
right?
wouldn't have a home anymore.
What we
At
thought.
some point, right?
Hey, we could move to San Francisco.
Yes.
Get a tent, sleep outside, and serve on the bank aboard the one that just failed.
That's right. Perfect. We would have the exact skill set to be on that board.
We'll take a bath in the San Francisco Bay. So that's kind of what they're looking at. So let's take a look and say, what about your retirement?
Yeah.
What can we do? Because this stuff, there's not much we can do. These people are doing what they can do. I guess we can vote or whatever, but it still goes on that way. So the one thing I would think we could do is we can control, and when people come in to see me, there's a few things I see, Betsy. One, they seem to be spending too much in expenses for the management of their retirement funds. So the first thing you want to do is say, hey, am I overpaying in expenses?
Yeah.
Most people that I see, there's an opportunity to cut expenses.
That's a good thing. That's a really
It's
good
like
thing.
a pay raise.
Yeah.
Okay, the government doesn't get that, but we do.
Yeah.
So we can cut expenses. The other thing we can do is on the show we always talk about the 3 buckets and where we take our income from and this and that. So depending on where we take our income, it's taxed at different ways. So usually there's people that come in, there's another opportunity for saving in taxes because maybe they're taking their income from the wrong bucket. So maybe we can save on expenses of investments and save on taxes. Then the third area would be how much do we want to risk in Wall Street until they get their act together? I would be careful with that one.
Yeah.
So we usually say the rule of 100 on the show all the time. So, it'd be a great time to take your age, subtract it from 100 and say, hey, this is all I want in the equity Wall Street bucket for now because it's volatile.
Right.
So those are the 3 things. We take a look at saving on expenses, retirement, how much we want to put at risk, the rule of 100, and saving in taxes.
Okay.
We can control that.
We can.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah. Take control of your retirement, right?
Because nobody else is going to do it for us.
Nobody else is.
Nobody else is going to do it for us. Yeah.
The thing that we're going to hear Congress talk about, hey, Social Security is going bankrupt, Medicare, it's nothing new. We've heard that for decades.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's like, let's look at what we can do. How do we take our Social Security? What makes sense for us? Let's take control.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, as we all know, it would be a fool's errand, right, to trust the government that they're going to take care of us, to trust any of those outside sources. So we need to trust ourselves and have somebody that we can trust guiding us, and that would be you, right? So you need to call Rachel so that you can have your review with her for free, and you can get this guy's expertise. So make sure you're giving them a call, and we'll be back with a lot more. Stay with us. Welcome back to Lowcountry Money Talk. Still lots to talk about today. And we touched a little bit about retirement in the last segment, but we're going to talk a little bit more right now because there are a lot of people out there that haven't really started planning or don't have the right plan in place. It's kind of staggering to me that the number of people that don't really have a plan.
Yeah, I see that every day.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. I've seen people 15 years in retirement don't have a plan.
That's even scarier.
Well, there was a fisherman that told me when the tide goes out, it exposes all the trouble spots. You know? So a good fisherman will go out in the low tide. But the other thing they said is it changes it all the time. So you have to be careful. That's kind of how we are today.
Right.
So retirees today, 2008 and 9 is long in the rearview mirror. Maybe they weren't retired then, so they don't think about it as much. This is my 5th bear market as an investment advisor. I've been doing this for 31 years now.
Yeah.
So
you've seen a lot.
Seen a lot. Yeah. Kind of, history tends to repeat itself. But a good plan will take the stress away.
Yes.
Most people, Betsy, spend more time planning a vacation than they do planning for their financial retirement or their financial future.
That's very interesting. But I wonder if it's because they're just a little bit afraid to look at what actually would look like. Maybe they're afraid they're not going to have enough money to retire.
Now, are you a person that gets up in the morning and says, look, here's 5 things I don't want to do. I'm going to do them now so I can enjoy the rest of the day? Or do you just leave those things laying out there?
I used to be the second, but I find that the more seasoned I get, it's better to get those things out of the way.
Well, here's what I learned in the military service years ago. We had to develop a plan. And by developing a plan, you take in certain contingencies along the way. And it reduces the stress.
Right. And
it also increases the odds of success. So we take that same mindset. So when I'm working with people, I've been doing it, again, I mentioned 31 years.
Yeah.
So I have the plan in my mind. Okay, it'll be a little different for each person, but the basic plan's going to be the same.
Yeah.
So when I'm working through that plan for the individual, I already kind of know how it ends up, okay?
Yeah.
But I want to take you back, and we need to go over that road together, or that roadmap together.
Yeah.
And then you just go enjoy your retirement.
And so what is the best time for somebody to start that plan or start that process? And if they haven't, and like you said, they are already into retirement, do it now, obviously.
Sure.
But it's never too late.
No.
But when should somebody really try and start?
Yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, even if you think you have a plan in your mind, let's come on in and let's review it under the current situations and see how it's holding up. Because a lot of the people I see that come in, the newer folks, it's not holding up kind of the way they thought. So I would do that. Now, the one thing I always like to tell people, not all financial advisors are the same.
Clearly.
As I mentioned, my experience, I'm local, right here in the Lowcountry. I'm independent, so I don't have any big banks telling me what to do, okay?
Right.
And local, independent, and fiduciary. So I'm going to look at your interest over the firm's interest, for, let's say, okay? So, and no big bank signs my paycheck. You do.
So you want to do the best job for us that you can. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now is the time to call Rachel so you can get your Revolutionary Wealth Review. There's no obligation. It's free. You do have to have over $500,000 saved in assets, but that's it. So make sure that you are calling Rachel to get that free assessment, and we will be back in just a moment. And we are back on Lowcountry Money Talk, and we've been talking a lot about retirement today, but one thing we haven't mentioned is if you're married, you need to be talking to your spouse about the retirement plan. It's not just individual.
Right.
Do people do that?
Maybe not as much as they should.
Probably not.
Good communication.
Yeah.
Communication with your investment advisor, your financial advisor, your retirement planner, whatever you want to call them, but also as a team with the spouse. So I see all the time people come in and it's like, well, usually it's he's taking care of. Sometimes it's she's taking care of it, but one of the spouses will be taking care of it.
Right.
And the other one's like, I don't really like to get into those numbers. And so the one will have his spreadsheet that he's been tracking for, 85 years.
Right.
And I'm like, and I'm like, well, do you know how to do a spreadsheet and all that? And she's like, I don't care anything about that. I said, the day you're going to care about that?
When he's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the idea would be that, I would think, we'll go over these 6 questions,
Right.
but what I would think is I always ask that both come in.
Yeah.
So we can have a plan and generate a plan, all of us.
Right.
And that will help whichever spouse isn't in charge of the spreadsheet to understand the plan so they don't get so bent out of shape or concerned if something happens to the other one. So, I already have I was in on the plan. So a lot of my job is just reminding people of the original plan that we put together, and it goes something like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, so let's go through the conversation that you should be
Sure.
having. Do we have the same vision for retirement? I think that's a really important one.
That's important. And you'd be surprised how many times.
They probably thought they were on the same page and they're not.
Yeah, back in the old days, I used to say, well, people have different ideas, dreams, whatever, of retirement.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of the male might be on the golf course or fishing, or it
Right.
usually doesn't work out exactly that way. And then, maybe spending more time with the grandkids, traveling, these type things, whatever. But we want to ask to see, and that's when we first find out that, hey, we're not on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is the vision of your retirement? Both of you. What do you see? What do you feel? How does that look to you?
Yeah.
And then we want to start the planning process of that.
Well, and kind of to piggyback on that, the second question is, do you want to fully retire? Because some people don't. Yeah.
No, my wife won't let me retire, so you're safe. Yeah. So my vision of retirement, to just share with you, was like, hey, I'm keep going as long. I like working. I enjoy numbers. I like doing investments and things. So as long as my mind holds out,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep on trucking.
Well, I think people like to have a purpose.
Yeah, they do. And here's the thing, though. A lot of people, Betsy, they can retire from a job and they can get a consulting job with the same company and have a lot more freedom.
Right.
So maybe their retirement becomes more like not fully retiring,
Yeah.
but maybe consulting or part-timing. One of the problems if we retire before 65 is like, well, what about Medicare, health insurance, stuff like that.
Right.
So one of the spouses may want to keep on something to where they can at least keep the health insurance.
Yeah, that's really important.
So that's one thing there.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
Of course, another question is, where do we want to retire? And I'm just going to kind of
Sure.
sandwich in the other question too, is where do we want to retire and what kind of lifestyle is
Sure.
that? What does that look like?
Well, a lot of people move down here to the Lowcountry.
Yes.
From the Northeast. It's cheaper.
No snow.
Sunshine most of the time. The weather, all these good things.
Yeah.
But it's, I could sell, let's say, I work for the Department of Sanitation in New York City. Obviously, I'm not from New York City. But I have a home there. I work for the garbage company. I make good money because it costs more to live there. So matching, the state maybe or whoever was matching my contributions to my 403B or whatever it may be. So that's going to be a big number compared to if I worked down south, I was getting paid less and that matching is less.
Right.
So I retire from there, sell my home just in a regular neighborhood for $1.5 million, right?
Right.
Move down here, buy me a nice home for much less, take my 401k, roll it into my IRA. That's a big number.
Yeah, it is a big number.
Where you retire matters because of the cost of living and such.
Absolutely.
So we have to figure that out.
And what do we see people thinking is their biggest worry when they're talking to their spouse about the retirement issue?
Outliving their money.
Yeah, right. For
Outliving
sure.
their money. It's still one of the biggest concerns.
Yeah.
So we have to design that plan. So it's like you have that worry, okay, so what are you doing about it?
Right.
And I'm not thinking about it. I'm not looking at it.
I'm just leaving it back over
I don't
here.
watch the news. I
put
don't
that in
want to
the
know.
closet. Yeah, right.
Well, let's fight that bear and get it over with.
Right.
Okay. Then we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Right.
So let's put a plan together, and that'll take care of that.
And that's really the last question: is do we have a plan in place?
Yeah.
And if they don't,
Do we have our affairs in order? Well, what happens when one of us goes, or both of us? So we have to figure out that too. So what happens while we're living? We're taking our money. What happens after? We have an estate plan. So all these things have to be configured and figured out.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to help you do it.
yeah, of course you are. Of course you are. And so again, I will say it again. Now is that time.
Yes.
Wherever you are in the wherever you are in the process. Now is the time to get your Revolutionary Wealth review with Rachel. Give her a call. It is free, and as I said before, no obligation. But you do need to have $500,000 in assets. Phil, it's so good to see you. I was so happy to be here with you today.
Well, I'm glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much, and thank you for being with us. And we'll see you next time.